So here we are today. Thanks for coming by. What I'm going to cover is side 2 of this mold. Here's what I did yesterday. Sprayed the PVA on this, and then subsequently I laid up the surface coat, and then from there I let that tack up, and then I laid up the glass in the DTO 81. So we're at a point now where this is cured enough to actually go to the second side. So what I'm going to do is trim this up a little bit, go around and get rid of all the loose stuff, clean the wax off of the plug, re-wax the plug, re-PVA this half, and then we'll put the gel coat on. So it's sort of repetition, you know, it's just what I did yesterday, but it's on the second half. Now, this was the parting box, and it's a better view today because there's no fuse in it. So if you look at the video from yesterday, you can see where I had the plug in this box. This is I don't know if it's MDF, but it's some kind of fiberboard, 1/4 inch thick, and it was smooth enough where I didn't have to do any sanding or anything. Basically, I just put wax right on this right here. And then, of course, the clay, which you see the remnants of it on the plug, where it was jammed down in the gap. Now, if you're really good, you have a small gap, but, you know, inevitably you're going to have a gap you're going to have to fill with some clay. The structure here was just C8 in. You can take clay balls or something, or tape, to hold this thing at the halfway mark. You want the plug to sit on your parting board at the high point. So in other words, you don't want to create a negative draft angle. You want the draft angle to be at the high point. So when you make a mold, when the mold comes together, it's at the high point of your plug, and it doesn't overshoot the high point and create a negative draft. So once you get that in there, you get it situated, then you can go just Frankenstein some CA braces in there and to support it. Otherwise, when you start laying this up with the free coat, not the free coat, but with the surface coat, and you want to massage it or put pressure on it, it's supported. It won't go through the board. So what I'm going to do now is get this thing over to the bandsaw. I've got a metal cutting bandsaw, and I just sort of freehand this thing. I just sort of go around there and trim all it off, and I'll file it. So let me see if I can get you a better view over here of this camera. Get some stuff out of the way here. Let's click on the comments in case somebody has a question. So that's the process. Now you could take an angle grinder, or you could use another method. This metal cutting bandsaw is just a cheap old I don't know, cheap old import. So one of the things I might have been able to do is clean this clay away from the dust. So might have a problem reusing the clay right now because of the fiberglass dust. But so at this stage you can just take Perma-Grit or a file, clean this up a little bit. Now once I get the layer on top, basically it'll come over the top just like this did the box, and I'll do the same thing. I'll take this layup that when the top is already laid up and cured, I'll do the same thing. I'll run it around the bandsaw and I'll try to get close to this line here that I cut, and then I'll go to a belt sander and I'll try to sand right up to both of them so the perimeter matches perfect. So when I put the molds together, you know, as long as this edge matches up, I know that it's where it needs to be. So right now, I mean, if you index this thing with a plug in it, to actually put your bolts through it, to bolt this thing together, the plug will actually center it and align it. Now if there's nothing in there, no part, no plug, you know, the alignment could be off. So you need something to where when these two halves come together, it's going to be lined up. So I think at this stage I could file it. You could do Perma-Grit, but I'll probably go over there to the this belt sander, and I'll stick it on this belt sander and I'll clean the edge. It'll be a little bit quicker. So that's about the length of time I can hold my breath. Yeah. And this edge right now doesn't have to be perfect. I'll get it pretty close because the second layup will actually be sanded into this edge. So when it came time to pop this off the board, it came off easier than I thought. Basically, I just took a dull utility razor blade that I've sanded smooth. I got it under the edge and got it started, and I pried it up a little bit, and I just worked this wedge around it, and it's a plastic wedge, and it was free enough and it worked out well enough to only had to come around about right in here, and the whole thing just came off. So that worked out good. Now when you scrape the clay or you do anything at this point, you want to make sure that everything you're getting against the plug is not going to scrape it. So this has been sanded smooth, like 320 or 600. You can go over there and sand it. As you can see, this plug has never come out of this mold yet. You don't want to demold this. You want to leave it in there if at all possible. By doing that, you're assured that it's bottomed out and it's tight. So when you pour the second half, it's an exact representation of your plug. And at this point, there's no reason to actually take this out. You leave it in there. So I'm going to go around here and just clean all the clay up. So if you tune in later, you're watching this video and you're wondering how I got to this point, you can go back and check the video I did yesterday, and it shows me laying up this part of it, the first half of the mold. So you don't have to worry about getting it perfectly clean. What I do, I'll take some wax, and this wax is pretty thin. It's AdTech #1, and I haven't found a place to actually get this now. I haven't looked too hard, but I like this wax because it was super thin. It's sort of like a oh, it's hard to explain, but it was thin enough to where it's easy to work in the small details. So I just clean the wax off, or clean the clay with this wax. Another thing, once you get the clay off, you got to go around and get the PVA off of this this mold face. It's not obvious right now, but this mold face has still got the PVA on it. The PVA transferred with the part, and not the parting board. So most of this clay that I've used is soluble with the wax. Another trick I like to do sometimes, if I get wax that's too hard or not pliable enough, I mix a little wax in with it, and it becomes easier to spread and use. So with this part, I'm going to try to make more than one mold. I'll try to come up with 2 2 or 3 different versions. The next version I'm going to try to shoot for a mold that could be used in an autoclave. Not that this one wouldn't be usable, I'm not sure, but I'm going to do a little bit more research on it. Find out exactly what I need. So I'm back to this razor that's been rounded off with 320. It's not sharp. And I'm going to take that and get right down in the V groove there and clean out that last little bit of wax. So what's transferable is what's on the plug. That's what you want to really pay attention to. If your finish isn't perfect out here on the parting plane, it's okay. But you want to make sure the plug is really clean all the way down to the parting board. And that's what's going to represent your final mold. And even though this part of the plug has been waxed before, I like to add more wax at this stage of the game. I'll go over it again. The other thing to keep in mind, it's like up here on this part of the mold right here, that's going to be removed anyway, so that doesn't represent the part, so there's not as much detail or time spent on that. So at this point, it's real important to take your time to get it right. The time it takes on a part like this, all the way from the foam plug, is probably 2 or 3 days on the foam plug. 1 day to carve it, get it to where everything is shaped right. The next 2 days are layers of fiberglass and sanding on it. And then maybe 2.5 days, I don't know, 3 days is the finish on it. So there's probably 3 or 4 days just in the plug to get it to this stage where it's got the automotive primer, the clear coat on it, buffed out. So basically you're building an airplane before you ever get to the mold. And then once you get to this stage, you're looking at another 3 days. So you might have at least a week in one mold. But that's starting from scratch. That's not just the mold, it's the plug itself. And if you get into a complex part, let's say a fuselage with all the detail in it, like rivets or stuff, you know, you're looking at it a lot longer than a week. At least at my rate, it would take me a lot longer. So, when you're grinding and sanding on this thing, you got to make sure you stay away from the plug. At this stage, you don't want to ruin your plug. So let's say I'm ready to lay up the second half of this mold, and you'll see this area right here where the surface coat is chipped out where the glass is or whatever. I'll just swipe some clay over that so when I spray the PVA, the surface coat that goes on next won't go down in that glass. So I'll give it a nice smooth surface with the clay. Now I'm going to go over the whole part. Now I'm going to get some Windex and clean this parting plane. So this will actually get the PVA off of the parting plane. Get that out of the way. Now I suppose you could leave this PVA on here and you could spray right over the top of it, but I just rather re-wax it and re-PVA it. You can see the green there, it's pulling it up. And this parting plane here, it sort of takes on the same finish as the MDF board or whatever that stuff I use. It's sort of like it's denser than MDF and darker, but I forget what they call it. Melamine or something without a coating on it. See Miko. Oh. Yeah, holding the breath on the grinder. So yeah, Miko, the what I do if I get clay, okay, so this modeling clay, there's different types of it, but if I get a modeling clay that's not very pliable, it's sort of on the hard side, I'll actually knead some wax in it. Just put a little dab of wax on it and just knead it in there. It softens it up. It's a little trick. So I've got this wax or this clay, 4 or 5 different types. Some of it I wasn't sure about. I bought it on Amazon. So the deal was, on some of this stuff, I guess it's beneficial in some ways and not in others. Beneficial in the fact that it's not very pliable, that'll hold a shape, maybe fill a bigger gap, but by mixing wax in with the clay, I was able to change the properties of it a little bit. And I think I found that out one time just by desperation. I was working with this clay, and it was clay that I actually had to take a monocoat gun and heat up a little bit. In my experience with composites, like I said before, I'm not an expert, but my experience, there's so many variables. Some of it has to do with temperature. Some of it has to do with the ratio, the chemical makeup, and And I try to stay with a system that works. And I tell people, you know, once you find a system, it doesn't matter what brand it is. Once you find a system that's working for you, stick with it. And another good source, if you can get a hold of somebody that's in sales. Now normally salespeople have a bad rap, but they can be helpful. So if you get a hold of somebody at one of these composite distributors, maybe like Composites One, and they can actually lead you in the right direction. They're not going to tell you somebody else's trade secret, but they'll tell you how their products are utilized, and that's beneficial. The other thing is, if you find a resin that works great for a part this size, and you wanted to do something 4 or 5 foot or a different dimension, get ready to change it up, because what works on one part with open time and hot life and everything is going to be different. And let's just say there's a little bit of a PVA film left. I don't get it all exact. It's okay. It's especially if it's on the mold flange. And the mold flange wasn't that perfect to begin with. It's okay. What's important is the actual plug surface right down there at the line. So I think I've got all the PVA off. Now I'm going to go back, see if I can get more wax built up around the flange. Just take it down here. I like to go over the edge with wax. Also, the second coat of PVA I spray on this thing, I'll PVA down around the side of it. It'll help the release after the fact. What I'd like to do in the next couple videos is slice up some foam blanks, cut a couple foam wings, and then get the hole shot back on the bench here so I can finish that up. I'm at the point now where the hole shot is ready to be laid out on the glass, so I can actually install all the I-beam ribs. And it's all in pieces now, but as soon as you lay it up and you get those ribs dropped in there, get the leading and trailing edges sanded, you're really far along. It looks like it's lagging behind, but it's the neat thing about these I-beams, sometimes it takes a long time to get to the point where you actually drop the ribs in. And then it goes really fast after that until you get to the finish, I guess. And you start sanding all those little ribs. So, can you get too much wax on this thing? Probably not. One of the things I like to do when I apply this wax, I like to bounce the light off of it. And I can see where it's streaking and where it's covering and where it's not. And let's say you start spraying the PVA and you'll get an area where the PVA is sort of fish-eyeing on you. That's alright, because you can just go ahead and wipe the PVA off with some Windex. And reapply it. Now this is where I sort of go around the edge here. Like I said, the next layup that goes on here, it's going to hang over the edge, and it's going to be just like this was before I actually trimmed it up. I'll do the final trimming of all this when the secondary layer is cured. And I'll take this thing on a belt sander and I'll come farther in so it encompasses this flange plus the new one. Otherwise, the glass and the resin that drips over this edge, basically it's going to lock the two pieces together. But once you grind past this edge here and you bring it in, then you'll have a parting line that you can get your wedge into. And the other beauty of it is, when these two halves come together, this matches perfectly out here. So that way you can tell that everything is aligned. With this mold being bigger, I think I'm going to actually have to put bolts through it. So when these two things are together, I'll run a drill and I'll screw holes, and I'll put fittings and probably secondary bonding, so when I run a bolt through, I can actually clamp these or screw these two halves together. Now, the two halves together, if you bolt it, will be the way to go with if you're going to heat it up in an oven. If you're just doing a room temp cure, heck, I've seen guys just do little clips, just little C-clips. So I think I got it to where it's going to hold the PVA. Now, there's a hole right here, and the way you get around that, you take some of this wax, and so you don't get any surface coat in the hole to lock it in, you just take this wax like that, and you just fill that hole with wax. And you got to remember, the finish on this part right here doesn't matter, because all that'll be cut away once the part is made. That's immaterial, so we're not worried about the finish or how nice it is up here. All I want to do is make sure that it doesn't lock itself together. And you can go back and put, you know, like clay in that hole there. And then also, like I said, this part right down here, it's got the glass showing. We don't want the mold locking together, so I'm gonna take some clay and rub it in there. And like I said, after the fact, and the second half is laid up, this flange will be ground down. But this will help a little bit. It's important you pay attention to the details at this stage. It'll save you rework later or a lot of grief. Okay, I think I'm at the point where I need to be. Now this finish, don't get too crazy. I mean, it doesn't have to be a mirror finish, because as soon as you put the PVA on, your mold is going to take on the gloss of the PVA. So if this looked like plate glass, it was a super good finish. The PVA would bring it down a notch. So the only thing I can do, or I've thought of, is taking the PVA surface of the finished mold and wet sanded it with like 1,000 or whatever. And then that way I can buff it. You're not actually changing the dimensions of it, but you're putting a finish on the mold after it's made. And I like to take it and I sight down the seam. So I'll hold it up to the light and make sure there's no little balls of clay or anything in that seam. The tighter you can get this angle, the better. You want it nice and sharp, because that leaves you a definitive edge. It gives you a better seam once the two halves come together. Less work after the fact. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll probably spray the PVA on camera here, and I'm not sure if, I guess I could put the gel coat on too, or the surface coat I mean. But let's at least get the PVA on here. And what I'm going to probably do on these videos, I haven't made videos in a while. I'm going to do a lot of streaming because it's easier to do. It's not as user friendly on your end, you know, watching this stuff. You're sitting there watching a lot of material to get a little bit of information. So the way I look at it, the way this works is you have shorts, you have 10-second, 20-second clips, and that's all it takes. There's, let's just say, some little trick or something somebody does, and it only takes 10 or 15 seconds or a minute, maybe 2 minutes. And then you have the videos that maybe 10 or 15 minutes where it takes a longer form, and 10 or 15 minutes is all it takes, because you can go through the whole process and you can condense a lot of information in that short period of time. And then you have videos like this that are a stream, where you come through here and you just sort of ramble on and you're seeing it in real time. The beauty of this is you can actually see me take this thing from point A to point B, and you know exactly how long it takes because it's real time. The other type of videos where it's just a hangout. So you have, like last night, Sparky on the hangout. Everybody comes in and they show pictures and they talk about what they've done during the week or the projects they're working on. And it's a kind of video that you watch sort of in the background. So what I do a lot of times on some of these videos, like the hangout, like a Friday or Monday, I wouldn't watch them live, or I would and I'd fall asleep. But I could come back the next day, come out in the shop, run the video, and they'd just be running in the background. So I think there's room for all types of stuff. I'm going to try to do that. Some of the videos I'll make when I've done shorts, some are 15 minutes and some are like this. So let me get this bandsaw stuck back over in the hole, and then from there I'm going to load the PVA gun up, and I'll show you how to do that. Now, I've got other videos of me spraying PVA, so it's nothing big. Nothing new. So the tools in this shop, they're all accessible now, but they're you still got to move them around. I guess a real dream shop would be you don't even have to move a tool, but I got them on casters, you know, where I pull different things out. So I covered this the other day. It's sort of redundant, the PVA deal. Now, I used to have a PVA gun. It was Thayer Chandler, I think. PVA gun was all stainless steel, and I'd leave the PVA in it, and it would never rust. These guns here, it's aluminum cup and stuff, but down in here there's some guts that are, it's like pot metal, and I can't leave the PVA in these guns, so that slows me down a little bit. But it's just a Harbor Freight cheapie. Now, one of the things you're probably going to have to put up with here is the noise of the compressor. When I'd edit a video, I could edit the sound down, but I'm not sure how to do that on this. I think the mic here, if you can see any difference there, I might be able to do it there. Like I said, this is an experiment when it comes to this video stuff. The more I do it, the better I'll get at it. So I think I'm going to try on this program, I'm going to try to take that slider and turn the volume down when I run this compressor and see if that helps. And then, sure enough, once you turn the mic down, then you end up talking for 30 minutes with the mic turned down. Nobody can hear you. It doesn't take much. I just pour it back in there, what I don't use. So that's a spray pattern there. So let's see what we got here. See if this stuff goes on all right. If it screws up, you just take some Windex, wipe it off, swipe on some more wax, and keep going. So hopefully you can hear me now. A lot of times if you see like a microscopic run or something, usually when this stuff actually dries it gets tighter. So at this stage in the PVA, if you didn't want to do any more, you could put this in somewhere where it wouldn't get dusty or dirty. And you could come back a week or days later and finish it. Once you get to the surface coat, once you start applying the surface coat to this mold, you're committed to keep going really, because what you want is the surface coat goes down and you want to leave a thumbprint on it without it transferring to your finger. And that's called a B stage. Now you subsequently go over the surface coat with, I use HTR 250 and like a 9.6 ounce glass cloth, which are in my last video. I showed you pictures of the specs. So what you want to do, you want the epoxy to cure to the B stage, but then you want to keep adding layers on it, whether it's glass, resin, DTO81. You're building up this whole structure. If you let it cure and it fully cures, then basically you got to have a mechanical bond and you're sanding it. So once you get to the surface coat, you got to keep going, in my opinion. So I think what I'm going to do today, since I have the time, and it'll probably take me, oh, I don't know, 20-30 minutes to get all this surface coat going. I think I'm going to do that. Now I don't know if I'll do the whole thing on the video, but I'll get it started. So what I'm doing here, if you can probably tell, you see me turn around up here. That's where I store the stuff. So you see me go overhead there. That's what I'm doing. I'm putting the stuff on the shelf, which you probably figured out. So here's the surface coat. It's a high temp surface coat, and here's the hardener for it. 302. There's a lot of different surface coats out there. You just got to make sure it's all compatible, I guess. Let's see. Hi Robert, how you doing? Yeah, the standby screen maybe, you know. I tried to turn the volume down, and I'll go back after the fact and see if it worked. Now we'll find out. It's easy to do on an edit, but I'm not sure at the live stream. And I know they have mics that will shut down if you get a high-pitched noise. Chop strand. So yes, chop strand. So yeah, a lot of times on these molds, the DTO81, it's like a sand mixture, and you know, you can see if it's a real fine sand. Could you chop strand and replace that? Yes. The problem is, once you get the surface coat on, you can get the surface coat down here in this really tight groove. You brush it in there. Now, as careful as I am, I'll go back and I'll inevitably find a few pinholes or something. So I just go back after the fact and I just fill those up and sand it, and you never know they've been filled. I fill it with the same material that I used to, you know, surface coat it. If you didn't have the DTO81, if you had like chop strand, you could pack that in there and you go around and make a fillet with it, so that way you get some strength. I was talking to a few people and they asked me about the chop strand mat. So it's not the loose filler material, it's like in a mat, and they sell it a lot for polyester. They sell it for epoxy too. But what you got to be careful of is the sizing. There's some sizing that they put on glass fibers that allow the fiberglass or the polyester to attach to it. Some sizing work on both polyester and epoxy. Some of them are just polyester, some are epoxy. And if you take a sizing that's polyester only and it's not made for epoxy, what you'll see when you brush this resin on, it stays sort of shiny. It's like the resin doesn't want to suck down in it. You'll see the glass should disappear, so you'll still see shiny spots where the epoxy is not really wanting to adhere to the glass because of the wrong sizing. So do a test sample. If you get something from the auto body store, do a test sample with your epoxy to see. But I tell you what, the chop strand mat and the chop strand is a fast way to build up a mold. It's something I need to look into, because the nice thing about the chop strand mat, you can tear it up in little pieces and you can start working it around the mold, and it's a really quick build. So that's something, yes, that's definitely viable. And there's more ways, you know, to do this. A lot of the stuff, I've talked to people that were salespeople. I've watched numerous videos on this stuff. It just goes on and on as far as my information. Basically everything I have knowledge-wise was picked up from somebody else. I mean, and then there's some, you know, obviously there's some hard knocks you figure out yourself, but yeah, there's a lot of transfer of knowledge from different people to get where I'm at. Same thing with building an airplane. You know, all this stuff with I-beams and structures, and there's no new ideas. I think it's just where after a while, you know, you add to something else that somebody's already come up with, try to improve upon it. I was watching some of the Hangout this morning, last night. Bob Hunt came on there with a beautiful wing. He was showing that off, and it was a work of art. What he was doing was a built-up wing. It was sheeted, and the way Bob was doing it made all the difference in the world. So the devil's in the details. So number one, he had the lost foam core, so that cradle he was laying up his wing in was perfect. So when he laid up his ribs, they were cut off the core, which were dead on, and then when he actually sheeted it, he sheeted it in the cradle. So if you're trying to do a sheeted wing on a built-up wing and you didn't use the cradle and the method he utilized, I don't think it would work. So go back and watch that Hangout last night on Stunt Hanger and look at Bob's wing and think about why he did what he did and how he made it work. So this is what you're looking at. This is surface coat. Now it gets a little bit thinner. I mixed this up yesterday. It's pretty good in the can. Don't have to do much mixing today. There's no separation. So what I like to do, I just get a dollop on this metal stick and I roll it up to where it's not dripping and transfer it. I know sure as heck you couldn't pour this stuff. Now you could pour it if you're doing a half gallon, but we're just doing enough for this mold here. So this, believe it or not, this is the best way I found out to get small quantities out of the bucket. It's thick enough to where it sticks to this little metal stick. And I just basically eyeball this. I look at it and think, well, I've done enough of it. I can sort of look at it and tell you that it's going to be enough. And I can't remember how much I mixed up yesterday, but that would have been a good thing to know, wouldn't it? So I think what I'm going to start doing, I'll probably go back on memory and try to memorize, or try to by memory, the schedule on what I've got in this mold, and I'll write it down. So I think the best way to do it would be to number this mold. Let's say call it a pod -1, and then the next one pod -2. Inside a journal, I guess you could say, or a book, I'd write pod -1, then I'd say, okay, 302X curing agent, or 302X surface coat, 100 gram mass, and I'd go through there and I'd keep a record of exactly what I did on this mold. And let's just say that a year from now I want to duplicate it. Well, I can open up the book and say, okay, this is exactly what I did. And I used to do that when I would do stuff for different people. I'd make a stab or a wing or something. I'd keep a journal, and I still have it. It's exactly what I did. I had a record of how much the sheeting was before the glue, after the glue, the sheeting once it was put together on the core. And it became valuable because then I could look at that and repeat my results. Okay, that sort of broke my own rule. Should never do that on a glass table. But it was just a little tap. Okay, I'm gonna have to get my calculator out on this one. The cup is 7 grams, so I know that much. Let's see, 2. Let's see. Now, if you're doing a lot of this stuff, it's probably beneficial to actually do the same amount. I know when I was making the bell cranks, I'd make the resin 10 grams. And then I'd do 33% per hundredweight, so it was 3.3. It, made everything a lot easier. So basically, I just globbed a bunch in the cup here. So I got to do the math. If I was really smart, I wouldn't have to get the calculator out. I'd still figure it, but I'm not at that point in my life yet. So I got 189.5. I'm going to subtract the cup. I'll tell you what, this phone, if you don't actually use it within 30 seconds or a minute, it goes blank. 189.5 minus the cup. I'm going to add 302x. It's 16% per hundredweight, I think. Double check. 12%. It used to be 16, but Linda, for some reason, said the 302x go with 12. So, don't ask me why. It's what Linda said at Resin Services. Plus 12% equals plus a 7. So I do this twice, okay? I don't trust myself. 189.5 minus the cup plus the 12%, add the cup. Okay, I got the same results twice. It's 211.4. 211.4. This is redundant from yesterday, but I'll do it again. Let's see what the message says. Hey, that's pretty cool. Old Robert said I had 124 grams in the cup yesterday. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I don't know if he remembered or watched or whatever, but he remembered how much I had yesterday. He knows more than I do. Okay, here we go. Let's get it up to the 211. Yesterday, this might have been pouring a little easier. It's a little bit cooler in the shop today. It's beautiful outside. It's probably upper 60s right now. You can really tell the difference when you start mixing this resin. If it's 95 degrees in this shop, or it's the middle of July, it's a big difference. I remember I was in Phoenix and I was replacing my sister's gate. It had lag bolts into a cement block, and it was a gate going back to her pool area. So I go down to Ace Hardware, and they got this stuff you squeeze through a gun, and it's structural epoxy for a concrete block and stuff, you know. So I buy 2 different tubes of it, one fast, one slow. So I start out with the fast, and I shoot this stuff in those holes, and I start putting the lag bolts in. By the time I got to the top set of hinges, it was already rock hard. And it's probably 100 degrees out there, you know. So anyway, I got the drill out, cleaned out the holes, and once I got the holes cleaned out, then I went to the slow. So sitting here talking, I bumped over a little bit. See, I went over maybe a ½ gram, 3/4 of a gram on something like this. That's close enough. Now I know when I made bell cranks up, 10 grams of resin, I pretty much made it exact, right to the 1/10 of a gram. I was always afraid of, you know, varying too much. The smaller the quantity, the more you're going to have to pay attention. One of the advantages of this clear cup is you can actually somewhat see if you're scraping the cup. You can actually feel the viscosity of this stuff change too once you mix in all the hardener. I'm going to go with the 2 cup here. I'll scrape and mix this as well as I can. Then I'll transfer this to another cup, and then I'll keep mixing. So, you know, something like this, I'm not really sure. I've never done the degassing thing. I know Sparky, he's got that little degasser, you know, that little tub he puts the vacuum to. I've done a little bit of silicone rubber before, just not much, a couple pieces I had to make. And it's almost, if you want a good part with silicone, it's almost like a necessity that you actually degas it. It holds so much air. This stuff here is thick enough to where it might benefit from that. But you know, with the gel time you have here, it's one of these things. I'm not really sure if you have enough time. This casting resin and the surface coat, basically you're just hoping that you get it mixed. You really can't tell. There's no color change like with Bondo. You know, if you have like gray Bondo with a blue or a green hardener, MEK, you know, you can see streaks in it. I wonder if you could add something to this hardener that wouldn't affect the cure, that you could see. You know, when you mixed it, it wasn't streaky like Bondo. You know. So when I'm stirring, this is at the bottom of the cup. It's always this dull screwdriver, it's been rounded down, it's always rubbing the side of the cup. I'm never in the center of it. So I'm always scraping. And then I pay attention to the corners. And then I like to go across, cross hatch the bottom like this. I rotate the cup 180 and cross hatch and keep mixing. Now when I think I've got it all, I'm going to transfer it to a second cup. So by transferring it and in the second cup, it alleviates the chance of something being stuck on the wall of the cup that hasn't been mixed. So I'll scrape this out of here. The other thing you'll see happen, so let's say somebody's doing a casting and they'll mix it up. When it comes time to actually get the last little bit out of their cup, then they start scraping the sides like this. Okay, they scrape the sides to get the last little bit out, just like this. And what might be happening is when they do that, they're probably dragging some epoxy down in the corners here that hasn't been mixed into the mix. Well, they don't keep mixing it here because they just did it over there. So I transfer it to the second cup, especially on surface coat and casting resins. Now if I do the real low viscosity stuff, like a laminating resin that's real watery, I don't transfer the second cup, I just go without it. So basically with this cup, transferring it, you don't have to worry about anything being stuck to the side of the cup that really wasn't mixed. So this is sort of like an insurance policy right here. But I've got days in that plug finishing sanding, and I've got a whole day just on one half of this mold yesterday. And I can't afford to take a whole week's worth of work and throw it away by something not curing. So back to these acid brushes. I think I'm going to do a couple things different. I'm going to pinch this thing down, or see if I can keep from losing some of my bristles. And I'm also going to do the acetone thing and clean this brush. I've been doing this lately on some of these brushes. I think I had contaminants, or I know I did. As you clean this brush with acetone, you can see the dirt come out of this camel here. When I was doing landing gear, I was having trouble with looked like release agent on the surface coat. When I tried to laminate the rest of it in there on top of the surface coat, I traced it down to some of these acid brushes. Now I changed brands, but I'm back to cleaning them all anyway. So one of the things you'll notice, paper towels. Go through a lot of paper towels. See the comments here. Okay, Robert, you're up here in northern Alberta. Yeah. It won't be long. You'll be warming up. I'll tell you what, it's beautiful here now. Now at this stage, the most important thing is to get in these crevices. It's like right here. I try to go thin enough right here to where I can make sure there's no air bubbles. So I start out really light right here. And I think if you're doing casting resin, and this was casting resin, I don't see where it would hurt to do this even with casting resin. Take a brush and go around the details before you start pouring it. And if it's starting to warm up, what you can do, I can feel the cup warming a little bit. Go ahead and get it out of the cup. So that amount of time mixing this resin, this surface coat resin, that's about the max. If you mix too much longer than what you saw me do, you're back to the point where you're starting to lose your working time. So I'll try to keep this in the video here. Now this stuff spreads really easy initially, and it starts to get gooey pretty quick, and that's why I wanted to make sure it went on the mold with a plug. The other thing, by doing this size part, it'll give me an idea. When I start doing parts that are bigger than this, I got a fuselage that's probably 3 times this size. This will give me an idea of just how much working time I've got. So when I get to the bigger part, I know to make up, 3 different batches. This sort of has a thixotropic feel to it. Yeah, Robert, being up north like that with cold, I think all the people around here are outside doing stuff now. Doing this stream, it's nice to have people tune in, talk to, but the main thing is it's up there where you can come back and watch it later. It saves me a ton of editing time. Not that I won't edit it eventually, but it gets it out there. So as you can see, if you want to build up this surface coat 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch, it's no problem. It's a pretty good high build stuff. Now I was watching Easy Composites, they're out of the UK I believe, and he had a surface coat that looked exactly like this. I don't know what the properties were, but the workability, the viscosity, everything, it looked like this could have been it. And here's the other thing, these resin formulators that work for these places that come up with this stuff, there's probably no secrets. I mean, they might tweak a formula for a certain customer that requires certain things, but I think for the mainstream people, like what I'm doing, you can pretty much use what's out there without tweaking it. So there's probably a lot of similarities between different brands. I guess some of it, I guess be like comparing generic Tylenol to the name brand. Let's get some of this hairs out of there, bristles. Yeah, when it started warming up, this resin started to get thick really quick. And that's why I poured it on the plug. You can't afford to keep working out of the cup. The other beauty of a surface coat like this, let's say you have a mold that needs a repair, you could grind into this surface coat just like you would a tooth filling, I guess, and then you could repair it. And it's a lot easier. Now if you had like fiberglass or carbon, it would be harder to make a seamless repair. So it'll be interesting to see. I'll try to remember this, how long it took this to tack. I'm talking about leave a fingerprint without it transferring, because once this tacks up, then I'm going to start laying up the rest of it with glass. I'll record the temperature that I'm working at here in the shop, which is probably under the optimum a little bit. So that way I'll know how much working time I've got. Yeah, thanks, Robert. I'm glad you enjoy it. I had a buddy of mine, he said it's pretty boring. I said, well, I know it's boring. I said, it's not really entertaining. I'm not an entertaining type of person. I said, the main key, the takeaway, whether you get it all now or you come back and rewind or somebody sees it later, is to actually get the information. I think there's two types of people on the internet. One type wants to be entertained and the other type wants to be informed or wants to learn something. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is just put the information out there where somebody can actually use it. And I've seen a lot of videos. I watch a lot of stuff. And let's just say I sit there and watch 30 minutes of video and I speed through it a little bit. It could be one of these things where 80–90% I know exactly what he's talking about. The other 5% it's like I'll never use, or I don't think I'll use, but there'll always be something in there that's like, well, I never thought of that. I'm sure I'm glad I figured that out by watching this video. All I'm doing here is trying to maintain the same thickness. As it comes down the edge, like right here, you can see it starts to drip a little bit, which is no big deal. I mean, it's all going to be good. So I don't know if you're still on there, Robert, but you ever heard of chop strand mat that's fiberglass compatible with the sizing? I think I've ran across it at one time. I can't remember where I saw it, but I remember running across it, and it might have been something that was really not out there in big quantities. So we're probably looking at an 1/8 to 1/4, 3/16. So here's the point here where sometimes I'd like to experiment. And what I mean by that is I've got this resin in the cup, okay? I could just take it and throw it in the trash. But let's just say that, let's try this. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I got this surface coat. I'm going to load it up with a bunch of this DTO81, okay? And I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let me get this thing adjusted. Before I get done with this camera, I mean, it's going to be loaded up with epoxy. Let's see why am I upside down. Couldn't get my camera to reset. That camera, when you tilt it down, it flips upside down. So this is a part, the composites I sort of like to do. I call it the science fair projects. So I'd mix up some resin and I'd have some left over, right? Just like I did in this cup. And I thought, well, you got nothing to lose, let's do a little science fair experiment. So I took this resin, which was getting thick anyway, and I loaded it up. And now what's in this cup is almost like a really thick dough. So if you're looking at purity between different resin samples, you wanted to maintain the properties, you could do this by adding and making your own dough. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So not only do you have this surface coat that's actually kicking off, you've added a filler to it, and you've created this dough. And it's sort of fun. I've done this before, but I thought I'd do it on the camera. Let me tilt this down. Okay, what I've done is taken this surface coat and I added the DTO81. and I loaded it up to where it's like it was almost getting dry. Okay, so you're thinking, what could you use this for? You know, you got this dough. Well, you could actually take this dough and go around this mold, and you could pack it in certain areas, right? You could build up. You could take a roller pin and roll this out flat and put it on plastic and transfer it to the mold, where you could end up with, you know, something thick like a dough. Or here's another neat thing I haven't done yet. Let's say you take a metal skeleton, right, which would be your handle. Let's say you wanted a control handle, so you'd have like 1/8 inch music wire or 1/4 inch or whatever. You'd bend it in a shape like a U, and then you might solder some tabs on it or whatever to give it some cross bracing. And then you take this dough, right, and you'd take it and you'd form it over that music wire. Now once this hardens, you can take a Dremel sanding disc and, you know, you can grind away at this, so you could change it. So you could take this dough and make your own custom handle. You know, you'd have your wire through there, so when you wouldn't have to carve a piece of wood. I remember Wendy used to make a wooden handle and he'd carve it. Or let's say you had a wooden handle and you wanted a special grip, right? Well, you could just take this and mold it over the wood. So just about any shape that you want to turn into a hard rock, you'd add enough of this dough. And it wouldn't matter if it was a mold or if it was a handle. You could do a specialized gun grip. You could do a handle for a cane. It's a certain shape. And you'd work enough resin in it, and you'd have to get it to the right viscosity. Now this is still pliable, but you could keep this in your hand and you could keep working it, and it would keep getting stiffer and stiffer. And you know, it's working like taffy now. And let's just say your fingers are sticking to it. It's no big deal. All you'd have to do is just add a little bit more of the DTO81 to it. It's like putting more flour on your dough. So right there's your there's a form. So you could set that aside and let it cure. You could always go back later and sand it or fill it in. So I thought I'd throw that out there. You know, it's you see how it's really thick in the cup now. Let's say you wanted to put some kind of inserts, okay? You had a hole on a piece of wood that's too big. Or let's just say you have wooden blocks, okay? And you want to make some kind of fixture where it has like a drill fixture or something. You could stick tube in there and you could align that tube just perfect to get the right angle. Pack this around it, and then once it cures, you're all locked in. So instead of drilling an exact hole or fixture, you could build up fixtures with this, as long as you could support your tubing or structure. Let's see. Let me read what Robert's saying. Yeah, research everything before I do it. Yeah, that's almost a necessity anymore. Okay, Robert, you get it for semi-hood repairs? Yeah. A wet mill tester, yeah. That way, like, I think what you mean, Robert, when you're talking about a wet mill tester, if you're doing a gel coat or something, or like this, you can actually find out how thick it is. So I think I'll keep this little glob. I'll set it aside and I'll use it for a grip. I'll set that turd over here. And of course, if it's needed a little bit thicker, you can just add more of that DTO 81. Now I need to find out through Freeman Manufacturing what they replace that with. I got on their website last night and they discontinued DTO 81 and they've got another number. And a lot of times these places are bought out or sold and they change things. I need to find out what the equivalent today or something comparable to it. But like Robert said, chop strand mat or something, I mean, those are great alternatives. It basically comes down to I'm using what I'm using is because what I got. Yeah, if your shop isn't full of epoxy. Used to be in the day, I had a phone out here. The phone was the kind you had to take off the wall with a cord on it. And the phone had as much paint and epoxy on it as anything out here. I'd go over there and answer the phone with my gloves on, it didn't matter. Full of epoxy or paint. Fast forward to the cell phones of the day, I just have to call back. You know, it's pretty neat, Robert coming in here, he's talking about some of the things he's done. There's so many people out there with so much information. Maybe not exactly what you need 100%, but they'll have stuff out there that can really make a difference. When Sparky'd go to John's house, Saturday at John's, if you guys remember that thing, he'd do every Saturday. And I called up Sparky and John. I thought, heck, I'm going to come over. I'm going to invite him myself. And it was a blast. I mean, to sit out there for, I don't know, hours. And we talk about building, and everybody was sort of working on their own stuff. What I like to do around here, I don't know if anybody around Indianapolis area is listening, but it'd be fun if we could get 2 or 3 people out here in the shop on a Saturday and have like a build session or brainstorming session and video it. Got enough area to work on different stuff out here. So that'd be sort of something to do. Yeah, Robert says, as far as your cup, I do the same with my pails of liner. Leaving a little bit in the bottom, see when it's hard, I know if it's cured. Yeah, exchange of information, yeah. You know, just like watching the hangout last night with Bob Hunt when he had his wing. And he did a lot of things I never thought of doing. So I told Bob, I said, I tell you what, I don't know when, sometime late spring here, early summer, I'm going to drive to Pennsylvania. And I said, we're going to spend a couple days together. I'll get a room somewhere and we'll stop by, but I'd like to go into your shop and work on a couple things with you. He called me on the phone. We're talking about these control horn bell crank setups. And he's talking about all in line. And at first he was enthusiastic, and then he started questioning it because it's sort of it's a simple process. It's all a one-to-one inline system. But the hiccup was it's not a bell crank. Basically, it's a control horn. Instead of a control horn like a flap horn, if you think of it, stand it vertical, and basically it's a control horn vertical with output arms on the top of your wing and your bottom of the wing. The top one drives the flap horn, I think, and the bottom one goes back to the elevator. So you have thrust, wing, and stab in line. The problem with having it in line is, and now you got all these geometry problems because you got, coming out of the wing, and you get so by putting everything in line, but you're driving the elevator separate from the flap off of, I don't want to say a bell crank, but the bell crank like horn thing. So there was a lot of problems with the material, how you're going to make it, how it's going to be adjustable, how to make it all work to where it's going to hold up. So I got a couple ideas in my mind. We talked about some things, and I keep coming back to keep it simple. And I don't know if I can sell them on it, but I'm going to make some prototypes up, take them out, and say, hey, this is what I come up with, and see what he says. So it'll be fun. One of the things I used to do when John Davis was living in the 80s and 90s, we'd get together and we'd hang out and we'd just brainstorm stuff. A lot of people like Wendy, they carried on and they actually produced composite airplanes that we were sitting there dreaming about. So, time and money. It's like Bob Hunt says, there's only one hobby, and that's spending money. That's funny. So anyway, this thing has got to set up. It's probably going to take, it's starting to get thick, so I'll probably give it another hour, and I'll come out and check it. And I don't think I'm going to do the glass or the dough. It'll be redundant. I just wanted to show you the half of the mold, what it looked like, how I prepped the wax off of it, the clay or whatever, waxed it, and then laid up this half. Now what I'll do is, when this gets tacky, fingerprint tacky, I'll take HTR 250 1063 and I'll brush a wet coat on it, and then I'll lay a coat of glass on it, 9.6 ounces, 7500. This is the glass that's going to go on it. It's like a tooling fiberglass. Doesn't have to be exactly. I like this because it's loose weave and it's conformable and it builds up quick. And then I'll put the glass on, then I'll put some DTO 81. I'll make a sandwich core to mimic the other side, so I'll build it up. By tomorrow, or a day and a half from today, it'll be ready to pop open. Now the molds come apart pretty easy. Something's got to give, so when it comes apart, plug is going to be one side or the other. Sometimes the problem is when the plug is in there, you have nothing to pry against. You have this delicate finished shiny plug down in the mold, and you got to rock it or get it out of there. So I'll probably do that on a video. And I'll tell you what I've seen some people do. They'll take a mold with a part in it, and they'll go over to a bench and go bang, bang it on a bench, and they'll pop it out. What I've done is I take like a rawhide hammer and tapped it, which sort of breaks the seal a little bit. So anyway, Robert, subscribe to Bob's channel. I get a kick out of that, some of that stuff. I told Robert, I said, you know what? You need to come up with about a half hour of bloopers. Just come in there and edit a bunch of videos down. I laughed one time. He was at John's house and he's got his phone case out. And he's got his 440 or 632 bolts and he's putting his engine in or something. He's standing at the bench. He doesn't move 1 inch. And he goes to put the motor back in or something and he can't find one of the screws. And he sits there on tape probably for 10 minutes looking around. He's yelling at John, he lost a screw. I mean, where can it go? Well, these phone cases have like a magnet on them, right? Well, the dang screw got into the phone case on the magnet, and that's where it was. Oh, crazy stuff. That's the problem. You do this stuff live. Oh man, yeah. You can make mistakes. I remember Ramey RC. He took it down. I was watching Ramey RC. This guy does this huge composite jets. And Ramey's got this mold. It must have been 6 foot long, and he 3D printed it. Probably took him a week to print it. And he's got this high-dollar carbon fabric, and he's bagging it down, and he's not putting it in an envelope bag. He's going around the flange with tacky tape, I think. And he gets all this wet resin and he wets it out and the carbon's in there and he sucks that thing down and the resin starts leaking out of the bottom of the mold. Well, the 3D mold that was printed was porous. It wouldn't hold the resin. And I think it was live or something, but yeah, it turned into a disaster. And I gave him a thumbs up. It's like, man, I can't believe he actually just published that. I mean, what a learning experience. I mean, I felt bad that it happened, but it's like, well, there's a learning experience. And I went back to watch the video again and he took it down. And I've been guilty of that. I've taken a few down. So anyway, Robert, I'm going to get off here, let this thing tack up. I'm going to get something to eat. When I turn this camera back on again, I'll probably go over there on the bench and I'll put some foam blocks on that thing. I'm going to slab out some slabs of foam, probably 3 inches thick. And I tuned this foam cutter up. And I've never really covered a whole lot with the foam cutter. I've made videos years ago. So I tuned it up and I made a few changes on the door where it's going to be better, I think. So I'd like to start with a block of foam, slab it, dimension it to the core, come over here, cut the core out, sand it, work it down, glue the sheeting together, show you the process that I use for sheeting. Put the sheeting on the core in the vacuum bag at 7 inches of mercury. Put it in the warming box, and then of course it have to be the next day, but pull it out of the bag and then core it out. And by vacuum bagging the sheeting on first and on the solid core, it allows you to vacuum bag the sheeting down. Now if you cored it out and it was hollow on the side, you wouldn't be able to vacuum bag it. Now Bob Hunt weights his down, and you could do that in the cradle or whatever. That method works great. But I wanted to vary it a little bit with the vacuum bag. And I'd like to do some testing to where here's Gorilla Glue, here's epoxy, here's this and that, and all these different things. And to see how one is better than the other. Let's see. Okay, yeah, Robert, check back, and I guess if you're interested in this stuff, whether you watch it or not, you could just click the notification bell, hopefully, and when I start it up again, it'll come up. So everybody out there that's watching, thanks, and I'll be back with more stuff. It's always good to take a nap by too. You can sit in a chair and put you to sleep. Talk to you later. Bye.